Have you discovered Rockland County? It's the Hudson River Valley's best-kept secret, where you'll find beautiful river towns. Whether it's the charm of Piermont, the art and soul of Nyack, the history of Stony Point, or the allure of Havistraw, you'll find them all in Rockland County. Start discovering the Rockland River Towns. Visit rocklandrivertowns.org to plan your trip today.
It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.
Sunset on the Hudson is the name of the show, and I'm Richard Quinn.
I'm Jennifer Santella.
And?
Well, I guess we should talk about our topics.
Yeah.
First, we're going to open up with a little news, things that we've picked up during the week that we would like to share with you because they've piqued our interest. This week's conspiracy theory topic, we're going to be talking about Antarctica. Who's been down there? What are they finding? What are they saying they're seeing? Mm-hmm. Tell us about some guests tonight, Richard.
I'm excited about the finds in Antarctica. Our guests tonight, Rockland Forager, Paul Tappenden, who we've managed to get out of the wilderness and here into the studio tonight, and also singer, actor, artist, humanitarian, Big Jim Wheeler will join us as our musical guest a little later. And those are our guests for this evening.
Yeah.
It's a nice, easy show tonight.
Yeah, you're looking quite fancy, Richard.
Thank you. I'm sporting a new look. I'm feeling fresh,
Dapper,
representing
dapper.
the hood in my new Chinese. This is actually Chinese. It's not Nehru. And because I want to be on good terms with the Chinese also.
Sounds like a good idea these days.
Planning on getting some T-shirts made.
Really?
Yep. And the Chinese make pretty good T-shirts.
Do they?
Yeah.
Do they? I'm nervous to check the back of my shirt, actually. Who knows?
Could be from China, could be from Vietnam, could be from Thailand, could be from India, Mexico.
Bangladesh?
Yeah. Well, we want to pay, we want to pay, we want to be economical about buying things, so that's why there's Walmarts all over the place, and that's what happens, it's even distribution.
Guess so.
Of wealth.
The world is flatter than we think, possibly.
Flatter than we think. Well, yeah, Nyack is pretty flat here, and then there's some water down by the river. Hudson River, that is. Sunset on the Hudson, where we get the name of our program.
So we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the news.
Yes, we are.
I mean, had Andrew Jackson been a little bit later, you wouldn't have had the Civil War. His wife died. They destroyed his wife, and she died. And, he was a swashbuckler. But when his wife died, he visited her grave every day. I visited her grave, actually, because I was in Tennessee. He was a very tough person, but he had a big heart, and he was really angry that he saw what was happening with regard to the Civil War. He said, there's no reason for this. People don't realize, the Civil War, why? People don't ask that question. But why was there the Civil War? Why could that one not have been worked out?
We are back. Yes, we are. And we have a topic first and foremost, don't we?
I certainly do.
Yeah.
Over the past week, I saw something that I thought was really great and really positive. And part of why we do this show is to highlight and add value to people that are doing good in communities and show that everybody can put thought in and add value and make things great, better for everybody. There were two groups that I worked at, that I looked at. One of them is in Berea, Ohio. And they started something called the Little Free Pantry. So for $175, they build little wooden boxes outside of like local establishments. Like the one that they made was outside of their local library. And when people walk by, they can put in food or toiletries or anything that somebody might need. So within the next couple months, they're hoping to open up about 6 more of them locally, and I would love to see something like this in our community. And the library would probably be a smart place to put it, you know?
Library, probably not.
Why?
Well, it's a library, and they don't get involved with things like that. But there are Nyack Homeless Nyack Homeless Foundation, and there's a People to People Foundation. Diane Siratori is, I think, the director of People to People, and they handle food pantries, and they help get food from either a church or if someone needs a pickup. They are centrally orchestrating the food and the volunteer services for the county. So People to People locally would be the Rockland equivalent to something
The
like
reason
that.
these people started this group, they said, was because they feel that there's plenty of people that need help and they're afraid to ask for it. So if they, in a sense, create something that's anonymous, then people may be more likely to take from it.
Mm-hmm. There's also a church around the corner that I believe twice a week serves free meals to anyone who wants to have a free meal. And there's interesting that you're bringing food up because we have the Rockland Forager coming up after our next break, who can tell us all about things that you can probably pick in your local park and take home and have as a salad. But that's a great story, and it does bring a lot to focus on the needy and the people who need a little bit more nutrition. They should be eating good things. And if people have extra time or food, they can contact People to People here in Rockland. Yeah, that's a place for them to go. Here's some tabloid news, which isn't good nor bad. The New York Post has Johnny Depp. I always find him fascinating. And apparently he has gotten to a point in his career that he splurges. He's going through these, like a drunken sailor, it's saying. But he has a dialogue butler, so he doesn't have to learn his lines. He has someone that learns his lines for him, and he's forked over hundreds of thousands of dollars to employ a full-time sound engineer who probably implants his ear with a small sound device, who's used for years to feed him lines during film production. According to paperwork filed Monday by the management group, Depp insisted that this sound engineer be kept on yearly retainer so that he no longer had to memorize his lines.
Wow.
The paper said. That was reported by Bruce Golden and Claire Atkinson. Don't say we don't give credit. So that was in the Post. And how about that as a world-class actor?
As someone that has worked and made productions, is this common? I don't know that is this something that a lot of actors do? Is this like exclusive to him?
I'm sure it's been attempted. We've had a few questions here about using headphones because someone couldn't remember their lines one night in a crunch, and we decided against it because it was too much room for error.
Right.
So we just went out without a net. That worked out okay. This, I suppose, it just relieves him of, all the hassle of all that memorization when...
I guess doing his job.
He could be spending money, like $30,000 a month on expensive wines, or unspecified millions to buy and maintain 45 luxury vehicles, a fully functioning horse farm in Kentucky, or $75 million on 14 acres, 14 residences, including a 45-acre chateau in the south of France and a chain of islands in the Bahamas. As they say here, that's a lot of booty.
Maybe he's a little overwhelmed. I don't know.
Maybe he is
just got
overwhelmed.
too many
It's a
toys.
lot harder than he thought it would be.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, he always wanted to be an actor, and it's a lot harder.
Yeah, hearing a lot of that these days, I guess, right?
Yeah, it seems to be contagious.
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope not. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Paul Tappenden. Correct?
I don't stand by anything, but if you say so, Jennifer,
I think so. I think that's what's up
we'll
next,
go with
right?
that.
You know, I know a lot of herbalists now, and the thing is that I bring something to the table that the herbalists can't, or at least most of them can't. They all know about the herbs and how to use them and what they're good for, etc., etc. But they don't know where to find them. They don't know how to process them. I know how to find them and process them, so we exchange information. You know, now that I've got this herb, they can tell me how they would use it and so on. That's basically how I learned. And experimentation on myself. I experiment on myself all the time with herbs, and I've been absolutely blown away by what some of these herbs can do. I'll give you 2 examples. Number one, I once shattered my shoulder blade so badly, I went and got it x-rayed, and the doctor said to me, okay, you're going to have your arm in a sling for about 3 months, then we'll put you into physical therapy, and he said at the end of 6 months you'll have all the mobility back in your arm. I went home, I started gathering, there used to be some here, I started gathering comfrey in my backyard. Luckily I was growing it for the very purpose, and I made a compress out of it and put it on there every day for 2 weeks. And my shoulder was raw when I finished, because it creates a reaction, and even though I would put other things on in between, it's still, my shoulder was raw. But okay, after 2 weeks I stopped using it. About 3 days later I went into the doctor's office and I said to him, how's that for mobility? In 2.5 weeks I had got to the point where he said I'd be in 6 months. And that was the first time I realized how potent that plant was. And I've given it to friends ever since, and they have used it very successfully, very effectively. I can tell you story after story after story about herbs that have blown my mind over the years, but another one that really I find just mind-blowing also is, and it grows everywhere.
Plantain?
Good old plantain.
Okay.
Stopped such a bleed with that one time.
Oh, this is such a
Yeah.
healing herb. And just recently I proved the theory of this. I was in the woods and somebody called to me. They needed me to move my car. So I'm rushing back to my car and I hit a rose bush and I got 2 slashes on the back of my hand. But I couldn't stop to do anything, so I rushed up to my car, I moved my car, and I thought, well, I'm in my car now, so I drove back home and I treated it at home, and by then I was covered in blood everywhere and it was a mess. The following day, I was in the woods again, accidentally swiped against a rose bush and got 2 cuts, almost in the same spots. But this time I had the luxury. I stopped, I got some of this, screwed it up, put it on the cuts. Within 5 minutes the bleeding had stopped, and the next day you couldn't even tell I'd been cut. This hand was a mess for weeks. This one was practically cured the next day.
Sunset on the Hudson, and here for you we have a very special guest, Paul Tappenden, Rockland Forager.
Welcome to the show.
Thank
nice
you.
to see you.
Good to be here.
Yes, welcome to the show.
So
It's nice to have you out of the woods.
yes, it's good to be out for a while.
And out. But you do spend an awful lot of time in the wilderness and thinking and compiling things from the wilderness.
Yeah.
So before we get started, give us a brief explanation or definition of what a forager is.
Well, basically, it's somebody who eats food from the wild, really. I mean, I have a yearly schedule, as it were. You know, as things begin to grow, like now we're in May. May is the big month. May's got everything happening. So there are things that I need in my life that I gather in May and I preserve in one form or another, or I use them as I find them. Right now is ramp season, so today I was in the woods gathering ramps so that we could have them for dinner this evening. A lot of what we eat at home comes from the wild or from the neighborhood or whatever. I mean, my street is full of wild food.
And when you mention this ramps,
Yes.
is that a quick growing food or has that been growing all winter? Is this a quick sprout and
It arrives around the beginning of May, and sometimes earlier, but around the beginning of May, they will stay around for about 3 weeks and then they're gone. They're basically a wild leek, and this is their season. And then once they're gone, they're gone. So, but that happens all the time. We get many overlapping seasons. So as soon as the ramps run out, I'm on up next thing, you know. So.
But you also, it entails preserving them in some fashion.
Well, I don't bother with ramps so much, preserving them. But there's a lot of foods out there, yes, that I do preserve by drying or freezing or.
Which is how you got through the winter. A lot of preserves.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. For instance, in the fall, that's when I do a lot of preparation. I will gather pounds and pounds and pounds of acorns, which I then process and turn into flour. Then I use that flour throughout the winter. I gather dandelion root, which I then roast and make into a dandelion coffee. Delicious, I tell you, I love the stuff. And there's many things I do that with.
I know you had tried some of your dandelion jerky.
Yes.
And that's from the stem.
That's from the root, yes.
The root.
I dehydrate the root and then I rehydrate it into with some kind of flavour, and then I dry it again and it becomes a jerky. And
nice
again,
and chewy.
Yeah, it lasts, yeah.
And yet edible.
Chewy, edible and tasty, and very good for you.
Which is the trick to make these. Some products need a little processing.
Oh, absolutely.
To become edible.
Yeah, well, not so much to become edible, but to become tasty.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And of course, there's some things to avoid.
There's a lot to avoid if you're not careful. But to be honest with you, there's not that many really toxic wild foods around. I mean, maybe half a dozen or so locally that will do you harm. But for the most part, most things can be eaten.
Mm-hmm. You had something, a recent post on grape leaves.
Yes, that was today, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lookalike out there called moonseed, Canadian or Canada moonseed, and if you use that leaf, you're in trouble. You know? But there's, you know, I'm doing a little series right now explaining the differences between common edibles and their toxic lookalikes. There's not too many of those, as I say. You know, if you know them, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Right, and before the show, you might have a little questionnaire. You know, which one do you think is safe to eat? And if they pick the wrong one, it's
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I actually do a lot of work with children, and they pick this stuff up so quickly. They are so sharp. Every year I go to the nature place up in Chestnut Ridge. When I go there now, I don't even tell them anymore. They tell me what it is. Because they've been going there so many years, they now know what all these plants are.
Right.
It's fabulous to see this.
That's great.
And you also have an affiliation with Cropsey Farm.
Cropsey Farm,
and the
yes.
Rockland Farm Alliance.
Yes.
You've had a relationship. And
I do workshops there,
Yep.
and I take people on walks. And actually, I'm going to go there tomorrow because I'm looking to find some wine caps, mushrooms. I think they're going to be coming up about now.
No, we know about the edible plants. Do you ever venture into edible insects?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I knew that would be a good question.
Well, when the 17-year cicadas were here, we had a ball. we had a cicada barbecue.
Right, okay. On a skewer?
On skewers,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, that was good. In fact, I discovered once that aphids are so delicious that I started, my roses were covered in them, so I started shaking them off into bags and eating the aphids. Once they found that out, I haven't seen them since.
They must have some form of communication. Get the word out to avoid Mr. Tappenden's yard.
What else have you seen that looks like pretty common in Rockland County that you could tell people to look out for?
Well, I mean, there are invasive plants out there that are really worth spending the time finding out about. Like, for instance, garlic mustard. There's a lot of garlic mustard growing out there right now, which is a really delicious green. The seeds are edible. The roots are edible. The roots taste like horseradish. So, I mean, there's that all over. I mean, come on, I could give you a litany of different plants that can be obviously out there. Right now, the stinging nettle are looking great. And that is probably the most nutrient-rich plant there is available. And so I've been eating them this week. It's also a really good medicinal plant. If you make teas out of nettles, it's good for the. Right now we're having seasonal allergies.
Right.
You don't get seasonal allergies if you drink the nettle teas. I mean, period. It just doesn't happen.
So is that the way to remedy an allergy, is to take something that's growing like around you in the same season? Because I know they say to have like local honey helps with allergies. So is there some connection about that being local?
Local plants are always the best to eat, as far as I'm concerned, because they have all the microorganisms that are locally, and so it relates to what's in your body. You know, people like to eat these things from the Far East, all these wonderful berries and so on, but it is really no better than going out and gathering, for instance, I like to gather barberries. Barberries are like hugely full of antioxidants, they're full of goodness. So each year I'll gather as many of those as I can, and I dry those and I use those for cooking throughout the year.
Where can people see your work and all the information?
Well, the best way right now is on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Paul Tappenden, and not every day, but almost every day, I put up something about what's in season and how you can use it, how you can access it, things you should do, things you shouldn't do, and including recipes and so on.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And once in a while you give a walking tour?
Oh, often.
Regularly?
Yeah. I announced that the walking tours tend to be spontaneous according to the weather and availability and so on. And I usually announce it on Facebook so people can come and join us anytime. We're doing a series of workshops at Cropsey Farm right now, a dozen workshops or whatever. You know something, it really bothers me that we've made such an enemy of dandelions.
Yeah. Or anything
we
besides some grass sod on the front lawn.
You know, they're so hugely medicinal and nutritious that why are we killing them? And walking to the supermarket and buying foods that have been sprayed with toxins. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, but that's the way the world is today, isn't it?
You said it.
There was a well-known organic sort of whole food store that took the skin off of oranges and put them in a plastic container, and it was funny for about a week until they discontinued doing that because Mother Nature provided its own packaging for the orange.
I know, we do some crazy things.
Yeah, just for the simplicity and for the convenience.
Yeah. I mean, I started out foraging because I was just interested in the whole subject, the subject of survival and eating wild foods. But I'm telling you, the way that food is today, it's a real survival technique to know that you can eat good, healthy, wholesome food, and it's very wholesome stuff out there. We've just given it a name weed and written it off, but there's some great stuff out there.
Could you see? Yeah, but you don't want too many people roaming around. I mean, could you see like the woods overpopulated with people foraging?
I would like it if a lot more people took an interest, because the thing is that we tend to destroy these things because we don't understand them.
Good point.
Yeah. The more we understand about their goodness and how they're going to help us, the more. I mean, it's like the bees. I mean, why are we killing bees? You know, no
That's
sense.
a very good point.
Yeah.
So more interactivity, more acknowledgement of species and the connectivity to our species.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is, again, one of the reasons why I always talk about eating the invasives, you know. Invasive won't even be a problem. In Japan, there's Japanese knotweed. It's not a problem there because every spring people go out and they take the shoots and they use them and they use them in medicines and health and so on. Here, we just let it grow wild and it takes over. I mean, so it becomes invasive. Yeah, so there's a lot we need to learn.
Well,
So
I feel good that you're foraging around and taking people on walks to make them more familiar with their surroundings here on the planet Earth.
Yes.
As we hurl around the universe.
Our planet, our good planet.
Paul, we couldn't be happier to have you here tonight. We hope
Yes,
to have you
thanks
down
very much.
again and to stay in contact with Paul on Facebook. That's Paul Tappenden. We'll have his information sprayed upon this video when you see it in the archive.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Peace.
Scientists have just stumbled upon a major discovery in Antarctica, and an incredibly alarming one at that. Researchers at Columbia University's Earth Institute have found that melting is occurring at a much faster pace than had previously been thought, and it's only likely to increase. The findings, which were published in the journal Nature, stated that there was an extensive amount of meltwater drainage that was flowing in parts of Antarctica where they didn't expect it. The Earth Institute also provided video showing a 400-foot wide waterfall as a river of water cascaded down the Nansen ice shelf and into the ocean. The Nansen ice shelf is a huge glacier that is 30 miles long and 10 miles wide, and the discovery indicates that the problem is not in the future, but very much in the present. And with temperatures continuing to rise, it's likely to only get worse. In the first such continent-wide survey, scientists have found extensive drainages of meltwater flowing over parts of Antarctica's ice during the brief summer. Researchers already knew such features existed, but assumed they were confined mainly to Antarctica's fastest-warming, most northerly reaches. Many of the newly mapped drainages are not new, but the fact they exist at all is significant. They appear to proliferate with small upswings in temperature, so warming projected for this century could quickly magnify their influence on sea level. An accompanying study looks at how such systems might influence the great ice shelves ringing the continent, which some researchers fear could collapse, bringing catastrophic sea level rises. Both studies appear this week in the leading scientific journal Nature. Explorers and scientists have documented a few Antarctic melt streams starting in the early 20th century, but no one knew how extensive they were. The authors found out by systematically cataloging images of surface water and photos taken from military aircraft from 1947 onward, and satellite imagery from 1973 on. They found nearly 700 seasonal systems of interconnected ponds, channels and braided streams fringing the continent on all sides. Some run as far as 75 miles, with ponds up to several miles wide. They start as close as 375 miles from the South Pole, and at 4,300 feet above sea level, where liquid water was generally thought to be rare to impossible.
was Paul Tappenden. We told you we'd get him here, and we did. Now we're on to some fake or not fake news from the South Pole.
That's right. We're going to be talking about Antarctica. Hope you're ready to go to space on this one, Richard. So I pulled most of my facts from a lecture by David Wilcock, who has been on Coast to Coast Radio. He's been on Ancient Aliens, and he has a couple shows on a website called Gaia.com. One is called Cosmic Disclosure, and this was a talk that he gave just recently, actually. This was just this week. So to try to go in chronological order, we could start off with something called the Piri-Reis map. So in 1513, there was an Ottoman general who was also a cartographer. Are you pleased already?
Yes.
Okay.
Because not only is it planetary tripping, it's also time tripping.
Oh, we're going all over the place with this
back
one.
to
This is
the 1500s. I hear
Yeah.
harpsichord music.
So, one of his maps showed that Antarctica at one time was not covered with ice. It was livable. The temperatures could sustain vegetation. And what they're finding recently, there have been new excavations, and they are claiming to find all sorts of ancient ruins about a mile under the ice, indications that there has been ancient civilizations, and even a mothership or two.
A mothership.
A mothership or
What
two.
would a mothership
A mothership, if
be
you could think of it.
in ancient times?
I really should go back and watch all of the Star Wars movies, but a mothership would be something.
One of those 4x4s, a big, four-wheel drive
I mean,
cars.
I think it's probably.
It's a new mothership.
It's probably like a mile or 3
You're talking
miles
like a flying mothership?
Yeah. Where
Frozen
the UFOs.
in ice?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm following.
So basically, to take a page out of George Lucas's book, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Mars was at war with a planet called Marduk, which, because of the war between them, Mars was nuked with 2 hydrogen bombs, and Marduk became the asteroid belt. So the inhabitants of Mars needed somewhere else to go. First, they stationed at the moon, but, I guess war followed them, more galactic battles followed
I
them.
saw this Flash Gordon episode.
Right?
Yeah.
So they found living situations that were previously inhabited in Antarctica. So apparently there's underground civilizations, there's motherships. So the mothership is like a big boat that has a conveyor belt in it so that the UFOs can go into the sides. Wow. Yeah, so apparently that's under the ice.
They probably have a casino downstairs,
and if
too.
they don't, maybe they should. Yeah.
They got to be entertaining themselves somehow.
Right, probably melting a lot of ice,
Melting ice, yes. Served on ice, or under ice.
Served under ice, yeah. That's good. You can keep that one copyrighted. So apparently there's ancient Mars civilizations that came to live under Antarctica. Strangely enough, nobody can really go there. Nobody's really allowed to go there. But John Kerry was there on Election Day, which is kind of strange. Buzz Aldrin was there recently and actually fell quite ill, which I guess would be neither here nor there if he's 86. That doesn't necessarily have to indicate anything.
He might have had, an indigestion or something.
Maybe, going all the way down.
I'm intrigued with Mars. Who was Mars fighting?
Mars.
Neptune, or?
I think it was Mars and a planet that was called Marduk. Again, kind of
I
like
guess Marduk
planet
lost. In the war
Marduk
between-
became the
right.
asteroid belt.
If Andrew Jackson was alive, he probably could have resolved that. Who could we write to find out some more information on Antarctica and trips? Plan your vacation to Antarctica now.
Some places I think you're allowed to go to, not most of it.
The underground
Yeah, the
casino.
big hole in the center.
I want to
you're
go
not
to the
allowed
underground
go to.
casino, see a show. I want to see Big Jim Wheeler down there doing his rock and roll review show. And plan your trip to Antarctica now. Prices are good. It's right time of year to visit Antarctica.
It might be. Yeah, it might be a good time of year to go.
Okay. Just call us here at the station. We're planning a station cruise to Antarctica, and then we'll get the dog sled and get right to the South Pole. We'll visit Edmund Hillary's last outpost. Or was it Cook? We'll get back to you on those historical facts. Until then, we'll be right back with Big Jim Wheeler, right here on Rockland World Radio. You are back, aren't you? Yes, you are, of course. I can see you. We're here with Jennifer Santella and our friend Big Jim Wheeler. We were just listening to Big Jim's tune, The Train
That Just
Left Town. And he does that with a group called Wheels on Fire.
Wheels of Fire. And we were aided in that song by the legendary musician, Vassar Clemens. He was the fiddle player on that. Unfortunately, Vassar has passed away, but Vassar played with a lot of people. I mean, he started out playing with Bill Monroe in bluegrass. He played with Artie Shaw in the big bands. He's even played with the Grateful Dead. So he's done a lot, and that's how I got started. I went to see him, and I asked him for an autograph.
And where was this?
It was a place called Images. It was a local place right up there in Orangeburg. And he was playing there with Peter Rowan. And so I asked him for an autograph, and he asked me to come into the dressing room, and he said, son, he said, there's over 400 people out there, and all screaming loud. He said, well, I hear one voice over all of them. And he said, that's coming from you. So he said, yeah, you sing professionally? And I said, no. And he said, well, look, he said, I don't know. He said, I've never given this offer to anybody in my life. And he said, I haven't even asked you your name yet. But he said, son, if you put anything down professionally, I will put my fiddle on it for free. I'll play with you for free. And he did. He kept his word. We went to Nashville to record the album. And he showed up, and he worked like a dog on that thing. And well, not only that, but then he afterwards he pulled out all kinds of violins and fiddles and cellos, and he just gave us a whole concert of classical music, big band music, you name it.
Yeah.
So we're very fortunate to have him on that CD.
Well, he felt a kinship, I believe.
Sounds like he had fun with it too. It sounds like you
we had a
made an
ball.
impression.
It really did, really fitting playing too. I mean, it just really puts the icing on it.
Yeah.
You do have acting credits.
Yes, there again, I was very fortunate in that. I was in a video store down in Piermont. And I was just standing there looking at some videos when I see this guy standing next to me with a big smile on his face, grinning from ear to ear. I didn't know who he was. Now, I knew the name Jonathan Demme, and I knew his achievements, but I did not know what he looked like. And all of a sudden, he says, hi, my name's Jonathan Demme. He said, what's your name? And I said, well, I'm known as Big Jim Wheeler. I sing, and that's what I'm known as professionally. And he just thought that for some reason, I don't know why, but he thought that I was like one of the most unique and original looking people he'd ever seen. And he said, I got to put you in the movies. So who's going to say no to that?
Right.
So the next thing I know is there I am. I'm sitting right there next to Denzel Washington doing a scene in The Manchurian Candidate, which also starred Meryl Streep and Liev Schreiber and Jeffrey Wright. And there was a whole lot of people in that movie.
Yeah, pretty intense movie.
It was. It was a great experience, And I'll tell you a little story. What happened was, there was 6 people that were supposed to be featured extras. Now, in that scene, the room was like there was over 300 people in this scene. We're all sitting at computers in this huge room, and I'm right next to Denzel. And so what happens is they bring in 5 extras, the 5 featured extras, and they leave me there. And I asked the assistant director, well, is this where I'm supposed to be? And he said, yeah, but Jonathan wants to escort you personally. So Jonathan comes back, and we start walking in. He opens the swinging doors, and we walk through, and all of a sudden, all these people, Denzel included, everybody stand up, applauding and screaming, and you hear over the megaphone, Elvis has entered the building. So He had his joke, and then when I left, they picked it up, and Elvis has left the building, and he had me leave before everybody else so that they could stand up and cheer.
Well, you guys knew each other pretty well by that point, because
we had become
got a
very
sense
close
of humor.
Friends. He was
that was the beginning. That was a while ago. Manchurian Candidate.
Yes, it was. I did Rachel Getting Married with Anne Hathaway, and I had he gave me a speaking part in that. Now, what he did, you see, now that movie he directed totally different, and what he did is he had a handheld camera throughout the whole thing, and I was in the 12-step program class, there was a couple of days, so we had to do different days of it, and I always sat right behind her because she's very tall, and I was the tallest one in the room, so so we all sat where nobody would be blocking one another, but I was fortunate because when you see her, you see me a lot, But he came back. Now, what he would do is nobody had a script. He would whisper in your ear what he wanted you to do. So now he stood up there and he said, okay, now for the first day, we start at 8 o'clock. He said, we're going to go right on through to 12 o'clock. I'm not calling cut. If you screw up, he said, don't worry about it. Just keep going. We'll edit around it, So we did 4 straight hours, just like it was a regular class. And then we came back after lunch. We were going to do exactly that same thing. So he comes back after he tells everybody we're just doing the 4 straight hours now. And he comes back, and I'm sitting in the back of the room, and he whispers in my ear. He says, Jim, I can't tell you who you are, what your name is, what your story is, but I'd really like it if you got up and said something. He said, you don't have to, but I'd really like it. Now, I figured, if I don't do it, I ain't never going to get
So now you got to
again.
come up with your line, too?
In 30 seconds. 30 seconds. He sat behind me at the control, and he said, action. All of a sudden, I stand up, and I start doing this thing, and I don't know where it was coming from, but I was talking about how I was wounded in the battlefield and how out there they only had morphine
no kidding.
And they addicted me, and it was never anything I wanted,
Right.
and it was put upon me, and I was starting to get all emotional and everything. And so what happened with that was that he called me up personally, and he said, Jim, I have to tell you, he said, we cut your scene from the movie because he said, you were so dramatic, and you came right before her major dramatic scene where she breaks down. And he said, if you were there doing what you did, it would have detracted from the emotion and the power of her scene.
You did elaborate on his suggestion of, he wanted to hear a line. You gave him a soliloquy.
Well, he told me, he said, Jim, he said, I thought that was so good. He said that I insist that it's put as a special feature on the DVD, and sure enough, it was.
Pretty cool.
Special feature number 2, Big Jim Leo speaking part.
That's awesome.
So the last movie
that he made was
the
Ricky
last
and the
movie with
Flash.
Jonathan Demme that you made, an even bigger role, and once again with Meryl Streep.
Well, see, that's the whole thing, is that he told me that the Manchurian Candidate would be my screen test. And if he thought I looked good, then he would put me in all his movies, and he would build my parts bigger and bigger, and he kept his word. The man was definitely a man of his word. And so, in Ricky and the Flash, I played a character called the Elvis guy, and I've seen throughout the whole movie, but there is a great scene where she jumps into my arms, and I get to hold Meryl Streep in my arms. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
How many takes did you have to do for that?
Well, now you see, that's the whole thing, is that, again, he was playing his little trick. He come running out, because she did that spontaneously. I mean, what's in the script? So she just, she was supposed to lean over the bar with her back to me and sip a drink out of a straw and then start playing and boogieing back towards that, stage. Instead, she took the drink and jumped right back, wham, right into my arms. So he come running out. He said, I love that. That looks great. Now let's rehearse it and look at it from every angle. So all afternoon, she's jumping in my arms, And then we filmed it from every angle. So you got to figure, the whole afternoon was spent with me and holding this woman in my arms. And it was Meryl Streep.
Yeah.
Yeah. What a great, great woman she is.
Very talented.
Oh, my God. She's the nicest person you ever want to meet.
She's played every kind of role, too.
And she can do it.
And a rocker, all right, later on in her career.
Well,
she plays a rocker.
the thing of it is that you wouldn't even recognize her because she's got all that elaborate punk makeup and this big wild hairdo, and she's got tons of jewelry on and this black leather skin-tight jumpsuit with these boots that have got heels on them like that. And yes, she learned how to play the guitar for the movie. She plays her own guitar. The band is made up of Bernie Worrell of Parliament Funkadelic on keyboards. They had the bass player and the drummer for Neil Young, and they had Rick Springfield on lead guitar, and man, can that guy play. And she was the rhythm guitarist. There was nothing dubbed. They played all live music in that movie, and she did all her own singing. And she just aced it as a rock star. Man, you would have thought that she was really, a fading rock star from years ago.
Right.
And now this is also the same woman who played Julia Child, who played, Margaret Thatcher.
The Queen.
My God, I mean, she...
Sophie's Choice.
You talk about a chameleon.
Yeah.
I mean, she can just morph into anything.
I'm sure she probably goes through the effort of learning her lines.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
She doesn't have a sound engineer in her
No.
ear. Speaking of sound engineers and
Yes.
rock and roll, you've got a performance coming up on Saturday.
Saturday night at the Turning Point in Piermont, New York.
Which is May 6th.
May 6th, Saturday night at the Turning Point in Piermont, New York. I'll be there with my band. It'd be Big Jim Wheeler and the Band in Black. And we're doing a Johnny Cash tribute that night. And we'll throw in a few originals, but, basically we're going to do the best of, the Johnny Cash, songbook.
Yeah, yeah. And if you close your eyes, you could picture the Man in Black himself there, because they do an incredible tribute and an homage to Johnny Cash.
Well, I got to brag about the members of my band because those guys are amazing. They have played with the likes of Luther Allison, Carl Perkins, Buddy Guy, B.B. King. I mean, they've played with the best, and I'm so honored and fortunate to have them backing me up, And
Yeah.
they play the music so well, and they're just so professional and so great that if I screw up, nobody in the audience will know it because they will just immediately just whip into this big break, and wail away on a guitar or something, and I can just stand there and gather my thoughts and get the words back. But that doesn't happen very
Down
often.
the line. It's like a train down the line. So you could go to turningpointcafe.com and check the schedule. You might be able to purchase tickets. You can call the Turning Point Cafe. Go to turningpointcafe.com, find out the telephone number.
That's
359
1089.
1089.
I'm sorry, it's 358. What am I saying? 358 1089. 845 area code. Yeah, 358 1089.
Turning Point Cafe. Big Jim Wheeler and the Band in Black this Saturday, May 6th at the Turning Point Cafe in Piermont, New York.
Yes. Billy Ruse on lead guitar, Muddy Ruse on stand-up bass and harp. We got Mike Corbin on rhythm guitar and Bill Rankin on drums. And, of course, my brother Spats Dominici, he will be setting us up and breaking us down, as he always does. He's our roadie.
And 9 o'clock set time.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock
early
curtain.
show.
Get there early, have some
Yes.
dinner upstairs at Limon and Tequila. Tequila
right.
and
Great
Limon.
restaurant.
Great restaurant upstairs. 8 o'clock Saturday night. Be there. Jim, thanks so much for being on our show.
Rich, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks very
so
much.
much. And
Stick around.
Stick around. Okay.
We're going to fade out here,
That's
and we're
good.
going to hear another song. Big Jim, you're playing at Memorial Park on this next take.
Oh yes, I was playing with another band. That was the
Billy
South
Ruse.
Twisters. It's a couple of members of my band.
Up
are in
South Twisters.
The Up South Twisters.
Up South
That's who I was
Twisters,
playing with
Folsom Prison,
Blues.
Big Jim Wheeler. See you next week. Sunset on the Hudson.
I hear the train coming, it's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sun coming. I know I can't be free. But the people keep moving, and that's what yours will be. Yay!
It's not just radio, it's Rockland World Radio. RocklandWorldRadio.com.